Hello and welcome to the Nasscom GCC Summit in Conversation series with technology leaders. Today I'm truly privileged to have with me Apoorv Johari, Head of Enterprise Business with HCL GUVI. For everyone's recollection, GUVI started off in 2014 as an organization, as an incubator with IIM Ahmedabad and IIT Madras Research Park, particularly specializing in vernacular learning, or if I may say, learning in your preferred language. Across these years, they boast of almost 3 million plus learners and support for 19 major Indian languages. GUVI was recently acquired by HCL in 2022. Apoorv, as the head of enterprise business, brings over 2 decades of experience across large-scale business and product management initiatives. Interestingly, the last few years being in building scalable learning and skilling programs and platforms. Today, our conversation is going to be about understanding his perspectives as an industry practitioner, as an expert in the learning and skilling development area, on the nature of changes that the new as well as the incumbent global capability centers, as we call them, or GCCs, of global MNCs set up in India, the kind of challenges, the kind of opportunities they have in the skilling and learning efforts and journeys that they have to make for their workforce today. Remember, viewers, that we are having this conversation in the context of AI-enabled learning. We're also having this conversation in the context of AI, preparing the new coming, the freshers and the new hires with already a lot of information that's available at their hands. So with that, I'll quickly welcome Apoorv. Apoorv, a warm welcome to you on this conversation. Wonderful to have you today.
Thank you, Namita. Pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Wonderful. Apoorv, I do want to take a few moments and get to understand from you your experience overall, over 2 decades, and particularly what inspired you to get into the whole learning and skilling arena.
Sure, Namita. So once again, thank you for giving me time here. And coming to your question, Namita, I would say that I come from a very small area, tier 2 city in India, and for us, the important thing to move up in life was education only, right? So and that's what our parents had reinforced again and again: study hard, study hard. So I kind of followed that advice, and then over a period of time I realized that as you learn, as you keep on innovating, as you keep on helping the organization, you move up in the ladder as well. And that's something which has helped me personally, and I feel that this is something that should be done by everyone. I think nowadays there are immense avenues available to employees to upskill themselves, and this is something that I've been doing as part of my role in HCL GUVI and in other enterprises, working with L&D leaders, working with CHROs to ensure how we can help them launch some really very engaging and immersive learning journeys for their employees, so that the employees can move up in their career paths.
Fantastic, and very well said. That we have always been in times when learning and skilling has been important, but cannot emphasize the importance of it anymore in today's environment. So let me start with my first question to you, because we are talking in the context of GCCs. We've always seen GCCs as bringing in a lot of global practice, expertise, domain focus, and we've always looked at them as the organizations that will take the Indian talent story a notch higher. However, Ever since generative AI has been there, it's kind of leveled the learning arbitrage, if we may say. What kind of talent development needs or imperatives are confronting GCCs today? How do they prepare themselves for an environment from being the pioneers of pushing the talent benchmark to now having to quickly adjust to this already learned, incoming stream of talent? How do GCCs respond to this?
Sure, Namita. And if you take a look at the GCC's landscape in India, as you mentioned, they've brought in global best practices. They've also brought in a lot of cross-cultural knowledge and the kind of initiatives that GCCs usually deploy are very structured. Um, and you rightly mentioned that AI has kind of taken away that advantage. What we typically see here is a set of activities which GCCs are now adopting. First one is that we see there is a clear shift from generic trainings to outcome-based trainings, which means that there is a lot of focus on how this training is going to help the team and the organization achieve their business goals. And as a result of that, we also see a reduced focus on measuring KPIs like number of learning hours. Um, right. The second important uh, aspect that we see is the need for contextualization. Right. There's no dearth of content. Right. But what GCCs are looking out for is, is a learning journey that includes the tools that they use, the methodologies that they employ, the compliance norms that they adhere to. And that's what we see nowadays, that GCCs are forming custom academies for their employees, right? Which includes, a few modules from some self-paced videos, then a mental-led intervention. And these interventions could be done by professors from IITs and IIMs. So that's the kind of contextualization that we're talking about. And then one more aspect that we see is that because this technology field is changing so much, we see there is a need to um, deploy refresher programs for the employees, right? Where the training happens today, but maybe a refresher happens 2 quarters down the line, just to ensure that people are able to catch up with something which has happened in the last 6 months or so, right? So these are some of the talent development needs that we see, and we typically see that GCCs right now are at an inflection point. Many of them have invested in the right platforms, in the right processes, and but there are some which are still catching up. But one thing's for sure, I think GCCs are viewing skilling as a differentiator rather than a support function.
Very interesting. I took a lot of cues from what you said. So, if I can summarize some of the things that you mentioned, outcome focused training, not just the number of hours, not a standard curricula, but more outcome focused. And the moment we say outcome focused, I think outcome differs for each individual, each employee. So, contextualization based on the behavior of the learner, the tools, methods, the very nature of the domain in which GCCs operate, all of that comes into the picture. But one very interesting thing that you mentioned is they're bringing in very actively the academia as well. Now, and the refresher programs, as you said, and I think probably the frequency of it has gone up significantly. One very interesting trend, if I may add, that we are beginning to see is, it used to be GCCs or tech service providers. We are no longer talking about them as competitors to talent. We've lately seen in the last couple of years the service providers and the GCCs come together, kind of join hands. Service providers helping a lot of mid-market, smaller footprint GCCs set up shop, also extend their in-house workforce in order to help the GCC set up. So that's kind of a talent, short-term lending of talent, if you may say, that's happening there, which has become one very interesting way for GCCs to come in into the into the country. Some of these things are very put together, are very interesting, but also a lot of change for the GCC organizations. Uh, do you see here a play for technology? Do you see GCCs using AI-enabled learning platforms or learning capabilities a lot? Do you see them use, for instance, generative AI to do the kind of skill matching with the skilling pathways that we typically hear of as use cases being utilized by GCCs to really fast track as well as personalize the learning pathways for their employees?
Absolutely, Namita. We are viewing that. And it's not just AI, there's a lot of data being now used, data analytics as an input to the initiatives which GCCs are launching. And I'll talk about the data piece first and then come to AI and give you a view in terms of how we are seeing this at play at some of our projects that we are doing with GCCs. So when we talk about data analytics, we see that GCCs are now utilizing information like performance scores of employees, skill scores, assessment scores, assignments, and using that information, they are in a much better position to find out where an employee stands today, right? And we're not talking about whether you've completed a course or not. It's more about which all modules were you stuck at while you were in that journey, right? It's more about what was this module needed for you or not, right? Because you kind of sprinted through here, right? So those are the kind of data points which a lot of learning leaders are now interested in capturing. And once you have that data, then AI comes into picture and starts recommending that for employee A, okay, this person is here today. Can they go through this path, which will help them go to the required proficiency levels? And that's what we see a lot at play. In fact, I'll give you one very interesting example of the work we are doing with a major enterprise here, where based on the employees' scores, an appropriate project is allotted to them. And while doing the project, if they're stuck at a particular place, the AI not only provides a helping hand, but also identifies 2 or 3 experts in the company who are champions in these modules. Now, imagine the power of this kind of a solution, right? Where you are not only getting the answers or cues to the answers, but you are also getting connected to the experts within the company. You can reach out to them, you can talk to them, and kind of get more and more clarity about how things are being done. So we see that this is something which is really at play. This is, I would say, an evolving field, and we see more and more traction in this particular area.
Very interesting thoughts there, Apoorv, and thank you for sharing that example. Almost seems like, earlier skilling and learning pathways used to be very, very linear, module 1, 2, 3, and it's got to be the sequence. But now with AI, one would think or one would assume that it's getting very diffused because I could be stuck at 5 places or 5 different steps in a 10-step process. And those 5 different steps might require very different skills. Some of those skills might not be exactly relevant to me, but yet somebody in the organization is going to respond because I need to, do that step to move forward. It's diffused and yet convergent in a way, and couldn't have happened had it not been for data analytics and AI, which then probably tells me that there's so much more scope to cross skill right? So now we are not limited to defining roles exactly. Now there's a lot more cross role combinations that can come up. There can be a lot of cross skilling. We can have fungibility, which used to be relatively difficult because everything had to be taught by a senior expert. Now there is AI to flag and catch the blind spots, etc. What do you make of this game-changing trend? I'm sure this is game-changing, but still very, very evolving for most organizations. What does this really mean? And what more can digital tools do, or how can they be deployed to maximize the impact of this, skill fungibility potential?
Right. So I would say when we talk about learning, Namita, it's not just about content delivery now. It's about coming up with the experiential learning, right? And if that can be delivered digitally through digital tools, that's when we achieve scale. And in that aspect, we are kind of seeing a few strategies being deployed at GCCs. First one, I would say, is aspirational learning, where um, I mean, where it's not about solving individual skill gaps. It's about showcasing the what's possible for you in the future, right? And this is where we see a lot of enterprises, or rather GCCs as well, use use some spotlight roles, right, for a specific set of people. For example, if I am a person who knows Excel really very well, the organization tells me that, okay, for you, why don't you adopt this learning journey to become a data analyst or a data engineer? And this is the path, this is the effort that needs to be put in by you, this is the timeline, and probably these are the benefits for your career, right? So those are the kind of aspirational learning techniques that L&D leaders are using. Second one, which we see, is more of how do we in a hybrid setup, how do we use the forums like cohort-based learning, for example, or online hackathons that act as a space for knowledge exchange. And another very important tool being used by GCCs, they do a lot of, we saw one hackathon which is now focusing on sustainability themes for GCCs. So again, very important tool, creates a lot of traction, creates a lot of team building within employees there. And then we also see a lot of initiatives focusing on giving cross-functional exposure to employees. Right? That's also really very important, simply because when we are launching a training program, you want the learners to see the whole as well, not just their part, right? So these kind of initiatives help people understand the priorities of other teams. So let's say a product manager now knows what a data science workflow is all about, or a Gen AI engineer knows that, okay, what is the KPI for a customer support team. So yeah, we see these kind of strategies at play, and we'll see more and more of adoption coming up in the future.
Great, great. Very interesting. So that kind of brings me to my final question, Apoorv. It's interesting. There are two factors playing here. One is extensive scale of personalization. Everybody can have their own journey, and they can literally have spotlight skills, and they can aspire to be in those crucial in those roles that they've always wanted to take up, which is a mixture of those skills. That's one, personalization to an employee. But then when you look at an organization, it's massive scale, right? HCL is a huge organization in itself, and you're solving it for many, many organizations, varying scales. Uh, how do organizations take personalization yet scale it and make it continuous? Because today the skill refresh cycle is very, very shrunken.
Right.
Everybody has to continuously keep learning. To manage that for so many employees across the organization, that's massive effort. So while I see only my personal skilling journeys, the organization sees it for as many employees as it has, and it's making that possible. What do you make of this trend, and how do you think technology will have a role to play in this, particularly when GCCs look at it and we are seeing massive influx of GCC. So how do you see this entire thing coming together?
So when we talk with L&D leaders at GCCs, Navata, we continuously hear at these kind of requirements. And what we're talking about is personalization at scale here, right? Which matches both individual aspirations and organizational aspirations. And in that effect, what we see are a few key things on which L&D leaders are focusing on. The first one is more related to how do I make the entire learning journey very modular in nature, which means that if I'm doing a training on, let's say, generative AI, a module might include a module on prompt engineering, on LLM evaluation, on responsible AI, and so on and so forth. Now, this modularity ensures that people are able to easily consume content. Plus, it gives me the benefit to continuously refresh that content because I can simply refresh that module and my learning journeys is up to date. So we see that kind of modularity being at play with these GCCs. The second focus area is more towards ensuring that people are able to apply the skills that they have learned, right? And this is applicable both to the individual and to the organization, right? If I'm not able to apply the skills, then my learning is of no use, right? So this is where we see that GCCs are looking at ensuring that individuals have the right set of tools available at their disposal, and learning is part of the work. It's not viewed separately, right? So if I'm stuck somewhere while I'm doing a job, I have a virtual lab or a sandbox available with me to experiment a few ideas and see if they are working or not, right? So that's also one of the things that we see, in focus. And the third one, we already talked about that, the orchestration piece. How can technology come into picture, recommend the next steps based on where I am today and where I want to be? And that can certainly help people go from one point to another. And at the same time, even organizations can define these journeys that allow their employees to move from, I would say, traditional roles to new age digital roles. So it's kind of a win-win for both the organization and the learners.
Wonderful, wonderful thoughts, Apoorv. And thank you for shedding light on a lot of these emerging trends. If I can summarize for our viewers, in this age and time, learning skill development is no more about content delivery. It's about continuous learning in a format in a way that is very, very personalizable to an employee, but that also creates the right kind of aspirational roles for them, drives them towards that aspiration, while the organization looks at making it very modular, application based, with the right kind of sandboxing environments that data analytics and AI, the tech platforms put together, can enable. And bring in the right kind of expertise from within as well as the academia to make this possible. I think exciting times, if I may say, Apoorv, since there is such rapid development in the technology space, that learning and skilling is going to be a very, very crucial aspect of everybody's work life. So thank you so much for sharing what GUVI is doing and what the learning journeys can be for GCCs. Wonderful talking to you today. Thank you everyone for watching.
Thank you, Namita. Thanks a lot for inviting me, and yeah, have a good day.